First order of business is we do record these. So I've enabled my camera so you guys can put a face to a name. I'm your instructor. My name is John Meredith. I'm a Sumo Logic employee based in New Hampshire. So I'm on the US East Coast and we have snow on the ground, and I have a feeling I'll see snow on the ground until now, between now and March, but that's okay. That's life here in New Hampshire. I wanted to welcome you all to class. We've got a group of folks who will be assisting me with this class, so I want to give them a chance to say hi and introduce themselves as well. So Jason, you want to say hi, sir?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jason Dunn. I'm a product marketing manager here at Sumo Logic, primarily in support of our security intelligence portfolio, inclusive of the cloud security monitoring and analytics solution that John will be presenting today. So yeah, really excited for today's session. It looks like it'll be a very active group and a big group, so we're excited to have everyone on board. And I'll pass it over. Is there anyone else who wanted to intro here, John? Or are you?
Yeah, let's go ahead and give a chance Odell, and then we'll do Tram.
Sounds good.
Odell.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am a trainer here with John as well, so I'll just be here to assist. I'm in the Midwest, so we have snow and cold. So for those of you that are in the warmer places, kudos to you. Thanks, John.
And Tram, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Tram. I'm the Sumo Logic training coordinator. You probably saw my name a lot on all of your emails, invites. So I'm here to support the sessions. If you do have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and excited to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Very good. Thank you. Jason, if I could ask you to go into the into the attendees and enable their microphones, I would appreciate it, sir. So that way
is that so you said across the board for all?
Yeah, across the board, allow them to talk. Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Will do.
Yep. That way, folks, if you've got questions, you can ask your questions to us directly, or if you want to, you can also put them in the chat box or the Q&A box. Whatever is easiest for you. I'm taking a shot here. Said normally with a large group, it's hard to manage the questions verbally, but we're going to take a shot here and see if we can get that all to work. So anyway, wanted to welcome you all to the training. One thing I do want to mention to you, and again, I'll just share the video one more time so you can put a face to a name, is that if you've got a question, please feel free to ask. As somebody who's been teaching since about 1986, and that's when I first started teaching, I can attest that when you ask a question, three groups of people benefit. Number one, you get the answer to your question, hopefully, and so you win. Number two, whoever's teaching your class, they hear your question and they understand what's really important to you, and so we win as instructors. We understand what's really important to you and focus on that. And then, of course, typically when somebody asks a question, it gets somebody else to think about, oh, that's a good question. I wanted to kind of ask a one-off on that. And so before you know it, we've covered things in a very interactive way. And so everybody in the class typically wins by asking questions. So I would encourage you to ask your questions, and anything we can do to help you, please feel free to reach out. That's my only ask. One other thing I wanted to mention to you, this class is part of a 3-day set. And I'll talk about what that 3-day set consists of, what we'll cover today, what we'll cover tomorrow, and what we'll cover Thursday. And then also, additionally, these classes are not only run during this time at this time zone and all that fun stuff, they're also run at 7 p.m. East Coast time or 4 p.m. West Coast time. So they're actually run twice. So if you or your colleagues, or you realize this has been a great session and you want to see the afternoon session, you can certainly register for it. So we encourage you to feel free to sign up and register for as many of these as you want. They're all free. Free is my favorite price. So I encourage you to take advantage of it. So additionally, like I said, everyone here, like I said, if you put questions in the chat box, Jason, Odell, and Tram will take care of this. One little thing I want to mention here while I've got the opportunity. Tram is the lifeblood of our organization. She coordinates all of our classes, sends out all the email, helps you with your Uber Eats vouchers, which I'll talk about in a minute, does a whole wide variety of things. And so again, want to take this opportunity to both give Tram a chance to introduce herself, which she has. So, again, we want you to meet the family. and we want you to meet, us at Sumo. But Tram plays a critical role in our success, and I want to thank her for that. All right, I'm going to stop my video sharing, and I am going to start the class. So let's make sure there's no questions here that I need to kick off. And let's go ahead and have ourselves a good time. So you are here for Sumo Logic Cloud Security, Monitoring and Analytics. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk about apps and queries and things like that we can build to query our security data. It is part of our security offering. So again, we're going to give a little introduction to Sumo Logic. For those of you who are not familiar with Sumo Logic, I'm going to walk into a security demo in our demo environment and kind of talk a little bit about security. Then I'm going to talk about and show you where the labs are. I'm also going to show you where class recordings are and slides and information. Because later on, when you take the exam, you'll find that with the exam, you'll have the exam is open note, open book, open documentation. So I want to make sure you've got access to the slides if you want to, so you can see them and access that information. So it says here we're going to take a break between labs after 1 through 5. That's not true. I'm going to probably take a break about 15 minutes about 50 to 60 minutes from now. So wherever that winds up being, it probably won't get to lab 5 yet. Okay. But basically we're going to spend a chunk of the time here doing labs, making it a hands-on class. And then the last hour is going to be a chance for you to take the certification exam. As I said before, the certification exam is open note, open book, open slides, and we'll even be here in case you get stuck on a question. You get stuck on a question, feel free to let us know, and we will try to help you out, okay? Our goal is to try to make you successful, and that's strictly what we're trying to do here, okay? So let's see, I think there was a question here. Just wanted to make sure. Does the exam have to be taken during the 60-minute window, or can it be done later in the day? It can be done anytime you want to, Ray. So good question. It can be done anytime you want to, but we're going to sweeten the pot here a little bit. If you do take the exam today, right after this class, and you pass it, all you have to do is, and I'll show you when we get into the exam portion where you can get your certificate and see that. But if you take your certificate and you copy and paste it and put it in an email and send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com. Again, that's training-promotions@sumologic.com, and I'll put that in the chat box later. You can get an Uber Eats voucher for $15. So we will send you a $15. Sorry, could you say that again? We'll send you an Uber Eats voucher for $15. So, so again, trying to sweeten up the deal, trying to get you to take the exam and pass it and go on from there. So that's the offer. All right. As far as Sumo Logic is concerned, a lot of people think of us as a continuous intelligence platform where we're ingesting logs and metric data, and that's true. But these days, we're thinking in terms of ourselves as far as observability and security, two of our major tenets. So we want to provide observability across all your applications, whether you're on the cloud, whether you're in-prem, whatever. We want to be able to see through that. And then we also want to provide you a high security footprint. So typically within Sumo Logic, you can look at your operational environment and see what services are up, what services are down, what things are running, that sort of thing. You can see across the security. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on tomorrow. We're going to focus on Thursday. So we're going to talk about all the various aspects of security intelligence with regards to Sumo Logic. And then last but not least, we'll also talk about business intelligence. You can use our product for business intelligence. So in another class, we'll talk about, you can ingest your web server logs to see, what web pages people are accessing, what page people aren't accessing. Okay. And so, for example, maybe you ran a special promotion on your website and you want to see if you're seeing traction from that. So you can see that through your business intelligence. Now, global intelligence allows us to see at a very, very high level across operational intelligence, security intelligence, and business intelligence, like I said, at a very high level. So, for example, for those of our customers who are using AWS Guard Duty, if AWS Guard Duty is pointing out there's an attack somewhere in the world, we can see perhaps who's affected and see what the impact on that is. So we can see things at a very, like I said, very high level, just to be, forewarned and that sort of thing. Again, your data could be in various applications, could be on the cloud, You could be using software as a service. Maybe you're using Salesforce or Office 365. Those are great software as a service applications. Of course, Sumo Logic is a software as a service application. So various mobile devices, so your data can come from anywhere. And again, we'll grab your log data, your metric data, and we'll process it. You'll find that Sumo Logic was born in the cloud, raised in the cloud. We support multi-tenancy. We scale up automatically, scale down automatically as we need to support your needs. You'll find that we've got a lot of machine learning functionality in here, as well as advanced analytics. Additionally, in between these two, there's something called API, Application Programming Interface, which allows you to programmatically do things from various API calls to our web service. So for example, you can create users, you can install collectors, you can do all kinds of things programmatically if you want to. However, in my mind, the major component of our product is right here under security and monitoring. We obviously went through a great deal of rigor and hard work to ensure that we've been certified as a SOC 2 compliant provider. We have achieved our CSA STAR compliance, PCI compliance. We have recently received about 6 months ago, maybe 7 months ago now, our FedRAMP moderate authorization. So we are FedRAMP moderate authorized for those of you who deal with the US government and that sort of thing. And then the last part of this, of course, is your role. And I suspect you're here because you have a role that requires you to interact and see these things. So regardless of your title, hopefully you're going to be able to see some value into this. Let me make sure the questions are all clear. Okay, good. So somebody asked the question about the exam. Yep, 30 questions. You'll have 16 minutes to complete. Now, in our security intelligence solution, basically it consists of 3 legs, if you will. First of all, we've got a lot of out-of-the-box applications, right? We got CloudWatch, GuardDuty, various Azure applications. We've got various firewall device applications built in. And I'll show you where those are in a bit, that you can install, and you can see, how is my firewall doing? How is my GuardDuty environment doing? What's happening? That sort of thing. So under audit and compliance, you can install various applications and see how you're doing. And you can even, if you need to, adjust some of these queries that make up some of these panels to reflect how your business is doing, reflect how your security platform is. You may have some specific things that you're looking at that we didn't necessarily put into our application, these standalone applications. So you can customize them, and you'll learn about that today. Then we have our security analytics, and that's really going to be our driving focus of today. Here, we're going to create queries that we can then take those queries and build visualizations. So you can see maps here, bar charts, various other visualization type charts that we can then incorporate into a dashboard. And we can also build alerts to notify you when certain things exceed certain thresholds and certain issues might be coming up. So this is what we're going to focus on today. And actually, let me advance the slide here to move the box. I forgot to do that. And so that's going to be today's conversation, these 2 areas. Tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to focus on Cloud SIEM. And for those of you who don't speak geek, SIEM is Security Information and Event Management. It is a product that we have here at Sumo that allows you to see, and it basically ingests all of your log data and allows you to see from the various records, various insights that are created, which indicate that there's some activity going on that's suspicious that you may want to look into. And we're going to correlate all this. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, and we'll talk about that again on Thursday. But you can see some workflow with event management. That's why the SIEM is in there. And then, of course, we're also working with Cloud SOAR, which we'll talk about later, which will allow you to automate this. SOAR is system orchestration and automation response. So we are integrating that with our Cloud SIEM product. So that's our offerings for today. As far as today's focus, what you're going to find is we're going to build some searches, build some queries. We're going to take those queries, turn them into these panels with these results with either graphics or text, and we're going to build dashboards. And in the process of building these dashboards and these queries, we're going to use some advanced analytics. So the ability, for example, to create this map chart, going to do a lookup, geo lookup. Also, we can look against CrowdStrike and other things, which I'll talk about as we get forward into the labs. So that takes me to our demo. And actually, I don't want you to go here. I want to stop my slides for just a second. Humor me for a moment. And so I want to give you an example here of a demo for security. Now, here in my demo environment, I have, and let me close this up, I have a series of demo folders. And I have a series of dashboards here. I've got one for AWS, one for Azure, one for Google Cloud Platform. And the bottom line is, and I'm just going to look at the AWS one. But we've got, we don't care who your environment is. It could be your own corporate environment. It could be an on-prem environment. But typically, you'll have the ability to build some sort of a map so you can see where are your users logging in from. And your users and you can drill into this map and see, does this all make sense, right? Are people logging in from where they should? Maybe there's a part of the world that you don't have any employees that people are logging in. That might be a suspicious activity type thing. Additionally, we can also take the IP addresses that people log in, and we can query CrowdStrike with those IP addresses to find out if any of those IP addresses has been recognized as having malicious activities. Are they associated with bad actors and problems? And so we can display that information here. And obviously, this is our training environment where we have, kind of mocked up data here a little bit. So hopefully you won't see this sort of problem in your environment. But for our purposes, for demonstration purposes, we want to, show that we can get that information. Where it says suspicious login distances, here I have a user who has logged in the last 3 hours from 2 different IP addresses. And one of those IP addresses is in the United States. One of those IP addresses in Egypt. And so, obviously this might be very suspicious activity, unless they happen to be going through some sort of a VPN or something like that. They shouldn't be able to go from the US to Egypt in 3 hours. We do not have transporter technology. So we need to recognize that, we need to look into this. Down here, I can see the information going across my S3 buckets. By the way, with our dashboards and our panels here, you can turn on or turn off various elements to focus on what you want to see. So these are actually controls that let you, like I said, turn on or turn off the various things that you want to see. We can get information from, for example, in this case, AWS Guard Duty. What sort of activity are we seeing? Any threats, issues, things like that. And by the way, each one of these panels that you see here, that's a panel, that's a panel, that's a panel. Each one of these represents a query. So today, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to build a series of panels and build out a dashboard like this with information that will help you understand how things are going security-wise. Okay. All right. Looking through the questions here real quick. A couple of questions here. What kind of access do you need for AWS? You need to be able to access your CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and any logs that you want to be able to access. So that's the access that you need typically. Somebody asked, is this a Grafana backend? Feels like Grafana. It's not a Grafana backend as far as I know. I've never heard the term Grafana associated with our product. So don't know. And then super. So also in here, like I said, I can also see an outlier diagram. So I can see my data going through here, and I can see this cloud behind my data. This cloud behind my data gives me so many standard deviations above or below my values. If I have a number or value that's outside of my cloud, I show it as an outlier. And so we can see, for example, if we're looking at our VPC traffic, we can see if we have any outlier data that we might want to investigate, look at, that sort of thing. And then, of course, here we can also see our firewall traffic. And I can, if I want to, as I said before, control what I see, because obviously I've got a lot of bytes being received. And if I take out those bytes from received, I can see what my bytes are sent. My bytes sent are significantly smaller than my bytes received. Down here, we can also look at our anti-malware, and we can see, is our malware catching things? Is it putting things, is it cleaning things? Is it deleting things? Is it quarantining things? What's going on? That might give us an indication that something else is going on within our environment, our network as a whole. So this is just designed to give you an example of some of the things that you can do with Sumo Logic and some of the various things that you can build. Okay.
Hey, John, do you have time for a quick question?
Sure.
The query, if you scroll to the top, all the way back up to the top of that, and I believe it was the second dashboard you looked at, where you talked about matching threat intel against
CrowdStrike.
I'm guessing CrowdStrike. I was curious, is that a license on the back end of Sumo Logic, or does that require the end user to have access to the threat intel feed from CrowdStrike?
That's an excellent question, and I appreciate it. I couldn't have asked for a better lead-in. I would have gotten to this later, but it's something that we provide. So you're going to use our license to query CrowdStrike on this information. So you don't need to have a license with CrowdStrike for this.
Thank you.
And this, by the way, is the underlying query that reflects on this result. So if I click on this icon, it takes me to the underlying query, and then I can modify it, change it, whatever I want to. So, yep. Any other questions? And by the way, for those of you not familiar with CrowdStrike, that's a pretty pricey tool. So we are providing you, probably saving you lots and lots of money. So.
Hi, John. Is that with every Sumo Logic license you get? For example, we use it. Do we get the CrowdStrike free?
You get CrowdStrike through our tool free.
Right, magic. Thank you.
So you can look things up through CrowdStrike. Yes. Yep. All right. So it looks like we're in good shape. And again, it looks like
we have a question in the Q&A.
Okay. Yep. I see it. Okay. So which of the different AWS services are used to make this dashboard? Cloud Watch logs, Cloud Trail logs, any logs that you want, any logs. So, it could be, like I said, as long as you got log data. And again, for security thing, we think of things like Cloud Watch, Cloud Trail. You could also, if you wanted to grab, if you're using multi-factor authentication, you could add your multi-factor authentication logs in here. So it's anything that you have logs for. Okay. Okay. So it looks like based on the comments and the questions and stuff, you guys are obviously here a bit intrigued, and that's good. So what I'm going to do here, bear with me a moment, I'm going to flip things around a little bit. And what I want you to do, because this class is pretty much hands-on, I want you all to log into our training environment. So let me bring up this slide. Let me copy some information here first. Let me go out to the chat environment. Okay. Also, somebody's asking about, can we share the evening class for the third day? I assume you're asking for the registration link for that. Oops, hold on. There we go. Looks like Tram's taking care of it. So in the chat box, what I'd like you to do is fire up Google Chrome or Firefox. And I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And it should give you a screen that looks like this where you get to log in. Now, this is our training environment. And for this training environment, I'd like you each to pick a 3-digit number, anywhere from 001 to 999. Don't care what the number is, except I am going to ask that you type it in the chat box. We're going to try to make sure not a whole bunch of people gravitate to the same number. 1 or 2 is not a big deal. 20 might be a bit ugly. So the point is, those of you who've always wanted to be James Bond and be 007, you can grab 007 now, right? And so you can grab a 3-digit number. It looks like they're all floating in here. Life is good. And I want you to log in as an email address of training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. Training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the current password is capital NEY, capital YEAR, numeral 2, exclamation mark. New year 22, exclamation mark. That is the current password. That password changes every single month. So you can use this environment and play around in this environment until about February 7th. That's when it's going to schedule to change. I do not know what the new password is yet. I will not know until we change the password. But if come February, after February 7th, and you are trying to access this environment, you can reach out to me. I'm putting my contact information into the chat box, and I will gladly share you that password. Okay. And what I need to do is I'd like you all to, if you're logged in, I'd like to go ahead and raise your hand. Now, while you all are raising your hand, and again, it's got to be a 3-digit number, Patrick, not a 4-digit number. While you're all doing that, I'm going to go ahead and log in here. So bear with me a moment while I do that. So right now I'm logged in as me. I'm going to log out. So I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. And I'm going to log in, and just for fun here, since I'm up in New Hampshire, I'm going to log in as Training Plus Analyst 603. 603 is the area code for New Hampshire. And then the password, and I'll actually display it for you so you can see it. Clicking on this little icon here, capital NEW, capital NEYR, New Year, 22, exclamation mark. And when I hit the enter key and log in or sign in, it logs me in. Now, some of you, when you log in, you may see some tabs across here. We'll clean that out in just a little bit. But I'd like to make sure everybody gets logged in. If you're having a problem, please let us know. Please. For those we're going to assume. Okay, somebody got the message that says, please verify your credentials. Patrick, that means either your email or your password was incorrect. I'm betting it's probably your email. Please check and make sure that you typed in Training Plus Analyst, 3-digit number, at sumologic.com. A lot of people forget the at sumologic.com. Okay. For those of you, you got a message saying your account is locked, try a different number. Because what happens is if so many people log in incorrectly, the account gets locked out for about 10 minutes. And Tram is once again, thank you very much for putting the login information in there now. So great, no problems. New message, I'm in now. Excellent. So anybody, okay, good. Tulsi's in too, connected, great, excellent. So when you're all connected in, if you raise your hands, I would appreciate it. That way I know we're all good to go. Now, I'm also not a new instructor, which means that I know that some of you are probably dealing with the day job. And so, you may not be logging in right now. You may be fighting a fire at work or something like that. I understand, I'm sympathetic. So I'm not exactly looking for 100% participation here. We do have 57 folks who've got their hand raised out of 112. So actually it looks like we've got about 66 folks. We got a rush here all of a sudden. So about half the class, a little over half the class, and that's good. Again, if you're having any problems, please let us know. Jason, Tram, myself are here to help you. Odell's here to help you get logged in. I'm going to go ahead and lower the hands, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about this environment. So it looks like everybody who wants to be in is in. Anybody who is not in, please let us know in the chat box so we can try to help you out. Now, one other thing, just to be nice here, I'm going to log out of this 603 environment. And by the way, the way you log in or log out is over here on the left is our navigation panel. If it's not open, like it's not open right now on my environment, just click on this hamburger menu or the stack of pancakes, but whatever you want to call it. But click over here. Down here, you'll see your account, who you're logged in as. And if you click on that, you'll have an option to sign out. I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to log in with my credentials. Why? Because I'm a full administrator on here. If you guys have problems, I can try to help you out. So I'm going to log in. All right. Balaji, I see that you're locked out. Yeah, try a different number. In fact, Balaji, try 603, because I just logged in with that and it should work just fine. Somebody asked what's the login timeout in this environment. It's set for about 10 minutes. It'll reset after 10 minutes. Okay. And Tim, just grab a different number. So want to make sure you all get logged in. All right. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this interface. And let's show you where some resources are that you might find very helpful while we're here. Okay. So here I am in Sumo Logic. Here I am on the home tab, right? The little house on the tab there. You'll see it's broken up into 3 sections. The Learn section. So if you click on the Learn section, here you can see some of our great micro learnings, and we've got a whole bunch of micro learnings out on YouTube. So if you go out to YouTube and you do a search for Sumo Logic and sign up for our channel, you'll see we got a whole bunch of micro channels. Quick 5 to 10 minute little lectures on how do I set up a collector and how do I do various things in here. Okay. Down here toward the bottom, we've got our hands-on labs for fundamentals. We've got our hands-on labs for administration. We've got a section here for cheat sheets. So for those of you not familiar with our query, if you click on this cheat sheets, it will take us into our product documentation. And here in our product documentation, I can see the various operators that we can use for log queries. So if you're doing a log query, these are some of the operators and stuff that you can use. By the way, I'm going to take this URL and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in the chat box just in case anybody wants it. Okay. And oh, by the way, if I go to the top of that cheat sheet, you'll find there's a PDF version of this that you can print out. But here we are in our product documentation. You can get to our product documentation, by the way, if you wanted to, by simply typing in help.sumologic.com. That will take you to our documentation. Now, I mentioned earlier in our Sumo Logic environment, we have hands-on labs for fundamentals, hands-on labs for administration. How do I get to the hands-on labs for this class? That's the question, right? So here in the hands-on labs for this class, if I go to the hands-on labs in fundamentals or administration, either one, I click on one of the labs, either one of the labs, you'll see that it again takes us to our product documentation. And over here on the left is our table of contents. So these top areas are chapters. And then inside chapters, you've got, sections, subsections, et cetera, et cetera. If you look here, you will see a link for hands-on labs, cloud security monitoring and analytics. This is where our labs are for the class that we're going to do. And so I'm going to take this URL, and again, I am going to paste this URL into the chat box because I want you all to find our labs for this class, because these are the things that we're going to be doing over the next hour and 25 minutes, maybe hour and a half. Okay. So somebody asked a question in the Q&A. Will this account remain active for practice for the next 2 or 3 days? Yes, it will. In fact, like I said, as long as that password is valid, that is to say New Year 22 exclamation mark, and it will be valid until February 7th, you can log in anytime between now and February 7th. Now, after February 7th, if you email me and I put my email in the chat box, you can get the new password. And I'll tell you what the password is. I don't know what it is right now. I won't know until the day we change it. That's when we decide things. And then you can come back in here and play some more. So this is a great place to play. Additionally, this is where you can see some of our labs. If you want to do some of those labs, you can certainly do that. I'm going to take, since I'm running Google Chrome, I'm going to take this tab with my labs on it, and I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to pin it. I'm going to pin it so it kind of hides itself out of my way. And because I want to be able to switch back and forth between my Sumo Logic training environment and my labs. Now, Some of you may try to do these labs in your environment. They probably will not work because you don't have the same data that we do. That's why we recommend you use our training environment for our labs. They were written specifically, we know where the data is. Okay. By the way, you'll notice in here, there's also a hands-on lab security analytics for Azure. So for those of you who are dealing with Azure and not AWS, we wrote a set of labs that you're welcome to use for that. However, this test, this certification test, and this particular certification test references our labs quite heavily. And I'll point out some of the questions as I go. But I want you to be aware that the exam is really on these labs and the material I'm providing. Okay. One other thing, I want to go back to my Sumo Logic environment here for a second. Here in my Sumo Logic environment, again, there is a button over here for community. So again, I'm in the home tab. I'm in the learn section of the home tab. And down here, there's a community button. If I click on that community button, it takes us out to our Sumo Logic community. This is a place for us, Sumo, our partners, and our customers to collaborate on things. So, for example, if you've got an idea for a future enhancement, there's an ideas area where you can log in your ideas and suggestions and things like that. You can also see, and people can vote on what they think, are important. I can also look at training, what training's being offered and that sort of thing. I can go to our documentation. I can go to the support site and log in a ticket. Now, here, however, in the community, if I search for the word slides, 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 uppercase, lowercase, doesn't make any difference. You're going to get two responses. This first response is the one that you want. Training and certification, labs, webinars, and slides. And if you click on it, you will see.
Very low for probably about 3 days.
Third question. Somebody's got their mic open. Okay. So here in this, and by the way, I'm going to take this URL and like before, I'm going to paste it into the environment so that you have it. But here is a place where you can see for all of our certification classes, you can see a link to our labs, a link to a recording of this class, as well as a link to our slides. So you can go in here to the slides if you want to. And like I just did, and you can see these slides. Okay. So you can access our slides because some of the questions are based on the slides. So just trying to help you out there a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Tulsi says, I wish I had two monitors to switch back and forth. I agree. And hopefully, Tulsi, I pronounced your name correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. So yeah, there's it's your environment is your environment. So, but we're trying to give you all the information that we can. Again, as I mentioned before, we've got a recording of this previous recording, so you can listen to this. Again, maybe you don't have time to actually sit through a class. You can watch any of our recordings and listen to our class on your own. Additionally, and I'll get into this when I get into the certification exam, where we do our certification exams, we also have a bunch of self-paced courses, including this one. So you can go out to our self-paced courses and do this on your own, at time convenient for you. Okay. And again, for those of you who did not hear my earlier mention, remember that this class that we're offering right now today, we will also offer at 4 p.m. West Coast time, 7 p.m. East Coast time, again later today. And same with tomorrow's class and Thursday's class. So we're doing it twice a day. I'm doing the morning sessions. My manager, Josh, is doing the afternoon sessions or the evening sessions, whichever you like to call them. So we do want to make it easy for you to attend and complete the class and quite frankly, get certified. All right. So any questions before we get started? And get into our labs. This class is heavily lab orientated. So we're going to go through the labs. We're going to build up some queries, going to build up a dashboard. And for those of you who happen to be running CloudTrail in an AWS environment, in theory, you should be able to take this dashboard, and we'll show you actually in an exercise how you can export it out and import it into your environment and use these queries. Now, if you're running something else, then it's not going to work real well. All right. Somebody asked a question, how many attempts for the test? As many as it takes. Hopefully it won't take too many. All right. Hopefully you get it right the first time, but you can take as many as you want. And you don't need to contact us to reset anything or anything like that. And there's no cooling off period. So you can take it as soon as you want. Okay. Somebody asked, does it be the same content for all classes? Typically, yes. Typically, yes. So. All right. So here we are in the Cloud Security Monitoring and Analytics Lab. Again, I pasted this in the chat box just now. So if you need this link, feel free to grab it. And again, it's giving us an idea of what we're going to do here. You know, there's obviously a lot of different things that are related to security that you might want to see. I may want to see my global view of my security threats. I want to look at some out-of-the-box applications for maybe Office 365 or Zoom or Salesforce or whatever. You know, all kinds of different things. I may want to look at my PCI compliance. I may build queries to support my PCI compliance to show that I really am compliant and to provide that information. I want to look at logs from CrowdStrike or GuardDuty, all that sort of thing. So again, it gives you an idea of some of the things that we support, some of our certifications, that sort of thing. It's now FedRAMP moderate authorized, by the way. That's changed. And so we are going to take a series of logs from various environments, and we're going to bring them into Sumo Logic, and then we're going to write queries to get the information that we need. Okay. So here in the introduction, if you click on the introduction, it talks about how you can log in and how we are going to build this dashboard so that we can see for our security operations center, so we can detect, investigate, respond, all of that good stuff. So we're going to build a dashboard that provides this wonderful information. Talks about how to access our training environment, which again, you know, the URL is service.sumologic.com. The user ID is training plus analyst with a numbered account at sumologic.com. And this PDF hopefully has the current password. So lab 0, we're not going to worry about. This introduction lab, we're not going to worry about. We are going to go into lab 1, and we are going to monitor our user activity. We're going to build our first lab. And for those of you who are curious, I plan on taking a break probably at the end of this lab. It'll take me at least 15 minutes. Maybe I'll get into lab 2, but somewhere between the next 15 minutes to 25 minutes, we'll plan on taking a break, a 10-minute break. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a query. Now, you can, I can, we can swipe over this lovely stuff. We can copy it if we want to. Then we can go in here to Sumo Logic, to our training environment. Click on our new blue button here and click on log search. Everything we're going to do in this class is going to be a log search. Okay. And then you can paste this stuff in. Now, that's all fine, well, and good. I'm not going to do it that way. I am going to start off with nothing. Now, we have metadata tags that we use to identify things like source, collector, things like that. One of our favorite metadata tags is the source category tag. When you create a source, you can define in that source a source category value that reflects your organization. So in my case, my CloudTrail data can be found by labs/AWS. And notice as I'm typing along, it's trying to help me here with my regards to my data. So I'm going to find, there's my CloudTrail data. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to run this. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Sumo Logic, when I run this, by default, the default setting for the query is 15 minutes. So I'm looking at my logs for the last 15 minutes when I run this. And the way I run it is I click on this blue button, or I just hit the enter key on my keyboard. Either one should work. And what I'm noticing down here is my query is done. It took a whopping 3 seconds to run. I got 25,089 records in my case, and here's my session ID. Down here, I have my respective log messages. I have 104 pages at 25 pages each, so that's where my total of my logs come from. So right now, I'm looking at my CloudTrail logs. And for those of you who are used to different formats, when you look at these CloudTrail logs, they are in JSON. These logs happen to be in JSON. Now, over here on our left is our field browser. And one of the cool things that we at Sumo Logic do with JSON logs is we automatically parse out the fields. We automatically parse out the fields. And you and I, if we want to, can select those fields and select those various values if we want to. Okay. We do this automatically with JSON logs. And so all I have to do is check mark what I want to see, and I can then see them. However, I'm going to go a little old school on it. I'm going to show you how you can parse out the fields yourself. Okay. So somebody wants us to put the username and password for Sumo Logic back in. We can do that. Just bear with us a second. Actually, let's see who gets to it first. Looks like somebody beat me to it. Yeah, thanks, Jason. All right. So what I want to do is, in my environment, I want to find a field here. I'm going to grab source IP. So if I want to parse out source IP, I find it in my log. So here I see source IP here it is on another message, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to parse out this field, all you have to do is put your cursor over that field, right click on that field, and say parse selected key. And you'll notice it now adds a new command, pipe. All our commands are connected together with pipes. JSON field _ raw equals source IP address. And if I run this, you'll now see that I am pulling out from the message my source IP address. Maybe I want to count by source IP address. Maybe I want to do various things. Okay. So it's pulled out my IP address from all of my messages. The interesting thing, though, is it calls it source IP address. That's the name of the field that it called it. If you want to call it something else, you can add an as clause. So if I look here at my code, you will see that we're calling it as src _ IP. Okay. Now, when I run it, you'll notice that my field name is now called src IP. So not only can you extract the field, but you can also rename that field if you need to. Okay. Yep. So somebody asked, do we need to save all queries? Yes, you can. And by the way, let's talk about that real quick. Over here to the right of your query, there's these 3 vertical dots. We refer to this as the more action button. And you'll see that we've got the more action button all over the place in here. But if you click on those 3 dots, you'll see there's a save as option. And then you can save it if you want to. Okay. And we'll get into that in a little more detail. Now, the other field that it wanted me to grab was event type. So let me go find event type here. Somewhere here in my message. Let's just go ahead and click on the ellipse. Let's see if there it is, event type. Again, right click, right click, parse selected key, and there it is. And again, they want me to call it, I believe, event _ type. So they want to use that sort of naming convention. And I'll run that. So now I've extracted out my event type and my source IP. Okay, Brian's saying his is parsing out source and source category, but I'm not specifying it. Okay. The metadata fields do get parsed automatically. So that's the answer to your question. Yep. So the metadata fields automatically get parsed. In fact, you'll see in any data source, you'll see source category, source host. Those are our standard metadata tags. You'll see that. Okay. All right, and then the last one, and I'm going to grab the last one myself, because in security, in user identity, what I'm looking for here is a username. Now, not all of these have a user ID in the user identity field. Some of them don't, some of them do. So this is one of those cases where I am going to grab this line and I am going to copy and paste this line in. Now, these lines can be in any order as you're seeing. I don't have them in the same order as before. And the order really isn't that important. Typically, when we grab information, we select the information that we want. Then we parse out the fields that we want, which is what we're doing right now. Then we start to aggregate and format. So this is a certain process that we go through, and we'll add where clause. Okay. So here I've got my actor, I've got my event type, and I've got my source IP. Obviously, the actor, who the user is, it's logging in. Are they logging in through API calls or console logins? And then what IP address are they using? So that's how that happens. Now, the next thing they want me to do here is, again, to grab event name. So let's go ahead and find event name. There it is right there. Right click on it, parse selected key. And again, I want to use an as clause here, and I am going to call it event underscore name. So these are the 4 fields that we're parsing out. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked, how did I copy and paste the last line? So when I tried to grab this line right here, this actor line, I swiped over it in the documentation. I right-clicked, I chose copy. Then I went into my Sumo Logic environment and I did a command or control V or P, control V to paste, right? So a simple copy and paste. That's how I did it. Now, one other thing that you might notice, the order that they're listed here is not the order that they're shown here. The order that they're shown here is alphabetical. So A becomes before EV, name becomes before EV type, comes before source IP. So they're listed alphabetically here. We can change the order in the fields command, and you'll see that later in the course. But they're listed typically alphabetical. One other thing, if I don't have a record that doesn't match my criteria, it automatically gets filtered out. That's why I'm down to 633 records for the last 15 minutes. Yep. So yeah, John, good point. Sorry about that. Thanks, John. So if you want to add a new row or new line, it's either a shift enter if you're on a Mac, or it's an alt enter if you're on a Windows machine. So if you want to add a new line, it's a shift enter or an alt enter. Thanks, John, for pointing that out. Okay, right. So Dan points out that when I open up the user identity field, it doesn't have a username. And he's right. Some of them do, some of them do not. That's why I actually copied that code in. Okay. Now I could have found a message that had a username in it and then used that and right clicked and said, could have said, hang on a second, there's a username, and I could say parse selected key. So I could have found one. But in this case, I just decided to copy and paste the code. Okay. Yeah, and again, somebody points out that in your messages, it might be easiest to say expand all, so you can see all the various messages and stuff that are here, all the various fields. So good tip. All right. So let me go back to our directions here. We're in lab 1, step 2. We just did step 2. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a where clause, and we're going to basically show you a couple different ways of creating parameters. Okay. So what we want to be able to do is select what event type. That for us is called a parameter. So I'm going to go out here. I'm going to add a new line again by doing a shift enter or an alt enter, depending on your keyboard. Type in a pipe, type in the where statement. And what I want to do is I want to filter for my event type. So I'm going to say where event underscore type equals or matches. I can either use the word equal or matches. And then what I'm trying to look for, what I'm trying to match. Now, I'm going to call the parameter name the same as the field name. Just makes it easy for me to do that. So I'm going to type in here event underscore type. Now, this does not make a parameter. There's 2 ways to create a parameter. One, manually, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. And then another way is when you type it in, you can actually create the parameter as you type it. So here on step 5, 6, and 7, they're going to create the parameter manually. We are going to put, before I highlight this, you'll notice there's nothing over here. When I highlight anything in here, I now have the option to create a parameter. So whenever you highlight something, you have the option to create a parameter, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on create a parameter, and you'll notice that it's going to put it inside of brackets, braces, okay? And I get to call my parameter name whatever I want. I will call it, again, event underscore type. So it's named the same as my field. Assuming I can operate a keyboard today. The default value, what I want to do is I want it to be unfiltered. So I'm going to use a global wildcard. For us, a global wildcard is a star. That is the default value that I am going to use. And since I'm doing a matches as opposed to an equals, it's going to do a string match. So the data that is in here is a string. My matches is a string match. And so I am in good shape. I'm going to talk about this other stuff down here in a little bit. We'll get to it. Just bear with me. But for right now, I want you to, again, give your parameter name, event type, put a star in here, and click save. That has now created for us, over here on the right, a parameter. And by default, when I run it with a star, I see all of my event types. Okay. Now, I could take, notice here I've got AWS console sign in and AWS API call. And by the way, notice I've got 694 results in my case. I'm going to take this AWS API call. I'm going to copy it by doing a Control C or Command C, whatever. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to paste that. And I'm going to run
do
this
the
again.
parameter again, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you go back and show how you did the parameter again, please?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So when I put this value in, now I'm filtering and only seeing those AWS API calls. So you can change this value to various valid values, and you can filter on and see which event types that you want. Now I'm going to go back and show you the parameter, hide the parameter in just a second. So appreciate that question. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Let me get rid of this line. Not ready yet. Let me just go in here. Again, what we did was per the directions, we typed in a where clause. We typed in and put in a new line, right? Shift enter, alt enter, whatever. And then we typed in pipe space where event underscore type, which is the name of our field, matches event underscore type. And the reason we chose to use the name event underscore type is that's what we're going to call our parameter. Now, I said there's 2 ways to do this. 2 ways to create a parameter. One is manually. I'm going to highlight this event type on the right. And over here is this create parameter. And if you click on that, it's going to bring up a dialog box. And here in my parameter name, I want to call this event underscore type. Down here in my default value, I'm going to put a star, which is a wildcard, which means I want to see everything. And I'll talk about some of this other stuff later. And we'll simply click save. That has created this. That has created this stuff over here to the right. Now, when I run this, I am seeing all of my event types. I've got two different types in here, just so you know. AWS API call, as well as AWS console sign in, okay? There it is, AWS console sign in. And if I wanted to, I could take one of these values. I could copy it. I could replace the star with that value, rerun this query, and I'm now only seeing AWS console sign-ins. I'm filtering. I'm filtering for what I want to see here. Now, ideally, what I would like is when I backspace over everything, I'd like to see a pick list, a list of all my choices. And that's something that we're going to talk about and create in just a little bit. Put my wildcard back, my star, so I can see all my values. Let me check the chat box, make sure we're in good shape. Okay. So somebody asked, can we have multiple parameters in the same query? Yes, you can. And we're going to in just a few minutes. So are we all set? Are we good at this point?
Hi, John. I've just noticed that if you change matches for equals, it doesn't work.
You're absolutely correct. If I change matches to equals, it doesn't work. Any idea why?
Because now it's not a string.
Correct. So when I look at my parameter, and by the way, you can go back and manage your parameter here, and you can manage your parameter settings. That brings up this dialog box again. Its data type is string. The only operator you can use on a string is matches. You can use equals to test equality. So that you could do on a number. But for string matches, you can only use the operator matches. So yeah, good question. Okay, yep. Good, 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 good. All right, so moving right along, we are going to, and that's how to manually create one. Now, I like to create it with code. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to add some code where we're going to add where actor matches, and I'm going to type in the code for the parameter at the same time. So just watch carefully. I'm going to add a new line. Again, Shift Enter, Alt Enter, whatever. Type. Another where clause, where. Actor, remember actor is the field name I created. Matches, it's got to be matches because it's a string match. We're going to match actor is the value of actor is string, not numeric. And then here, if I just type in my brackets, two left brackets, and then whatever I want to call this, two right brackets, you'll see it automatically created my parameter. That's a lot easier than swiping over and all that stuff. But there's still something I have to do. I have to add my star. So now I can see all of my actors. I can see all my event types. And ultimately, this is going to allow us to filter what we want to see. So you can type this in directly, and most of us do that. Most of us just type it in with the brackets, builds the parameter for us, makes it much easier, saves time. Okay. Somebody said the query window disappeared in my test lab. Yep, let's go ahead and let's show you that. So here's my query window. Notice I got a close box up here. I can click on close box and that closes my query down and I don't see it. All I see is the parameters. If you wanted to, you could give this to your customer or your user and they could then select the event type and select the event actor here and all that. But how do I get this back open? A little button over here says show search query, that gets it back. So if you accidentally close it up, that's how you get it back. Okay. You're very welcome. Okay. What about case and sensitivity with your parameter search? Good question. Because we're doing a string match, it's going to have to be a case, it's going to be case sensitive. So my where clause is going to be case sensitive. If you want to, we've got functions to take it to upper, to lower, things like that. But it is going to be a case sensitive match on my where clause. A lot of these other components are not case sensitive, but the where clause is. So just trying to answer your question. So yes, you convert it. It's a to upper function, to lower function that you could use to convert it if you needed to. Okay. All right. So we've added this where clause. Now what I want to do is I want to start to aggregate. And so I want to count by my actor, my event type, and my event name. Before I do that, I want to make sure that you understand here in my messages area, my messages tab, I see my field browser, I see my message results, but I can't create any visualizations from here. Once I do either a count by or a sum by or a min or a max, then I will see event type, actor, John, spell it correctly, and event name. Now I can put these really in any order, but basically what I'm going to do now is when I run this, you'll now see it creates this aggregates tab. And in this aggregates tab, I now see event type, actor, and event name, the order that I specified. And then I can see a count. Now I really should probably put these in the same order as the direction. So they want a actor, event type, and event name. So let me just switch this around a little bit. Make sure they're in the right order, okay? I want to make sure my results match the screen captures here, okay? Just to be more precise. Okay. Yep. Jacoby mentions it doesn't work with camel case. He's right. So there is no camel case command. There's to upper, to lower. So anyway. So now I've got it counted. I've got this aggregates tab. And because I have this aggregates tab, because I counted or summed or minned or maxed, I now have also the ability to take this information and I can create bar charts, column charts, line charts, all kinds of other charts. This one grayed out is my map chart. I don't have the information I need to visualize a map yet. I need latitude and longitude and count. We'll talk about that. So I can see what visualizations I can create, or if I want to see the numbers, I go over here and display a table. And there's my numbers. If you do display a table, you can download that table if you want to export it out. Now I'm going to go in here and I want to basically specify my top 10 actors. So we have operators called top or bottom that you can use. And if you're ever curious about any of these operators, go out here to help.sumologic.com. In our documentation, you can search for the top operator, top K, whatever, and you can see how to use it and some examples and all that good stuff. But we're going to go ahead and we want to see our top 10 actors based on the count and the event type. So I'm going to go ahead and take this code, if you don't mind. I'm going to add a new line and I'm going to paste it in and I'm going to run it. So now here in my aggregates, I am seeing here my top 10 actors, top 10 people based on event type, based on count. I wanted to see it based on count only. I would have seen some of these things would not have repeated themselves like they are. There's Kevin there, there's Kevin there. So, okay. How do you sort by count? Good enough question. Easy to do. Let me add another line. By the way, I could click on this to sort either ascending or descending, but I assume you want to do it through code. So there is a sort by or order by operator. So I could use either one of those, and I want to sort it, I assume, by the value of count. So that's underscore count, and I'll explain that in just a second. And then I can specify I want it in descending or ascending order if I want. So first of all, this count right here is an operator. It counts things. Think of a teacher in a classroom counting students, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The results of that are stored in this variable here called underscore count. That's why I put an underscore in front of that count. That's what I want to sort by. So that's how you would sort it, okay? Now I'm going to warn you guys have a lot of good questions and I appreciate them. I don't want to discourage them, but I want you to be aware that we're going to run into a time crunch here. There's a lot of you and only one of me. So, okay. How did I get to the table view? So when I switched over here to the other views, you'll see the far icon over here is a table view. And that's how you get back to the table view. Okay. Right there. That icon. So, all right, back to my code. Then they want me to transpose my actor and my event type. Basically, what we're asking to do is we want to make a pivot table out of this, right? We want to see our actors listed here. We want to see our event types across the top, and then we want to see our count. For that, we use the transpose command. Again, transpose. What do I want on my row? On my row, I want actor. What do I want on my column? And I can have more than one thing on my row or my column. This case, I want event underscore type. So now when I run this, you will see here are my actors. Across here, I have my event types. And this, by the way, makes it a little easier for when I create a visualization. Now I've got kind of a clustered visualization. Makes it a little easier to see. I can see which are AWS API calls, which are sign-ins. And by the way, I can also filter them and select them from here. Okay. So now we're really starting to build something here that's going to help us out. By the way, I realize it's almost break time. Actually, it's probably a little bit long for break, but I want to finish this lab up first. First lab's always the toughest. Okay. Can you change colors? Excellent question. You're leading me. You're leading me well. So what I'm going to do here is, bear with me a second. Creating a chart, right? They say we can use the bar chart graph, and then to go in the settings icon and we can change the colors. So back here, we went to bar chart, go into settings, change properties. I can change this to red, series of reds, whatever I want. Okay. By the way, for those of you who want to set the values based on colors based on range or conditionally format this, you can do that as well, depending on the visualization. So if you want to conditionally format this based on the values, you can do that as well. It's under your settings. All right. And that basically is that. Now, there's one other thing that we want to do, and we're going to talk about this in a bit later. We're going to go into more detail. Right now, you're just going to have to take it on faith. So here on lab 1, steps 11 and 12, and believe it or not, we're in good shape. We're almost there, almost done. But 11 and 12, what we want to do, as I mentioned before, is for my event type, when I get rid of this, I want to see a pick list. I want to see a pick list. Now, the way we're going to do this is we would create a query that shows us all my event types. And we would save that. So you'll see this later in the course. We'll show it to you. But for right now, we've already done this. So what I want to do and what I want you to do is for your event type, in your parameter, I want you to click on this More Action button. And I want you to choose Manage Parameter Settings. Manage Parameter Settings. And now we're going to talk about how we set the values for this parameter. Okay. I'll talk about the aggregate tab in a second. Kurt, bear with me. So here, I am going to click on Set the Value for the parameters. Now here, I can specify that I can type in my text of my values that I want, Or you'll find that in Sumo Logic, we can use label value pairs. So we could have a metadata tag and the value of that we could use that. Or we can create a lookup. And what we're going to choose here is a lookup. Now, we've already done this for you. So if I click on lookup, which is what I want you to do, the next field down, it's asking for the lookup file. And if we type in a slash and shared slash and start typing in event, you'll see that I have one called shared event types. We've already created this. Later on, we'll show you how to create this, but we've already created it for you. And so we're going to click on that. So it says /shared/event types. So in my shared library, we have a lookup file that's there called event types. And we select that. Now, once we select that, we can select the fields inside there. And that only has one field. It's called event type. And you'll see this when we create it. So I want to select the field for values. And then I'm going to click, and I want you to click save. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we go in here to event type, and I get rid of the wildcard, the star, you'll now see I have a pick list. And I can use that pick list to choose either value. In this case, there are only two values. Or I can put my wildcard back. Now, later on, we'll show you when we build out actor, we'll show you how this lookup table got created. So we'll do it for actor later. Any questions so far? Okay. Somebody asked, where is the aggregate tab? So down here at the bottom, I have messages. I have aggregates. Whenever you do a count, a min, a max, a sum, that operator will create this aggregates tab. And from this aggregates tab, or using this aggregates tab, you can create visualizations. You can also add this to your dashboard. You can't add it to a dashboard from the messages tab by itself. Okay, which brings us to our next topic. Here in exercise or lab 1, step 15, 16, whatever, we are going to create a panel and put this in our SOC dashboard, our Security Operations Center dashboard. That's what we're doing. We're building this dashboard for our users. Now, we need to be careful here. We need to pay close attention because there's an area where things can go a little wampus on you. So down here in my aggregates tab, on my aggregates tab, you'll see I have the option to add to dashboard. And I want you to click add to dashboard. And you can call this panel anything that you want to. I believe we're going to call it, per the directions, top 10 user activity. So I'll call it top 10 user activity. I've already typed it in, so it remembers the last couple things I've typed, and I'm going to go with that. Here for the dashboard, I have not created this dashboard. So we're going to create a new dashboard. And I believe the directions want you to call it SOC with your initials and 3 random numbers, okay? So I'm going to call it SOC _ my initials, JWM. And because I have done this time and time again in classes, what I'm going to use for my initials, and I'm going to put 4 initials in, I'm going to put today's date, 01/25, okay? So I'm just going to put today's date in there. And what should happen is it should say, okay, I don't have a dashboard with that name. Are you wanting to create a new dashboard? It should give us the option to create a new dashboard. And that's exactly what I want. So I want to click on create this new dashboard. And here is where we need to be careful. By default, when you create a new dashboard, it's going to put it in the new user interface. We want to use the legacy dashboards for right now. So I want to make sure you take this switch and you throw it in the other position. So it's over here to the left. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem with this particular dashboard. We're going to rework these labs in the future, the next quarter, to make sure they work on the new dashboards. But right now, there's an issue. So here's my panel name. Here's my dashboard name. I throw the switch over to the left. By default, it's going to put it in your personal folder. And whenever you're ready, let's go ahead and click Add. And Shazam, it's going to create this new dashboard. So here is our dashboard. You and I can adjust its size if we need to. We'll talk about adjusting the size and cleaning it up later. But here is my dashboard. Here it is. By the way, if I went into my Sumo Logic environment, into my personal tab, I could go in here and I can find it in my personal tab. Hang on a second. SOC 0125 right there. There it is. Okay. And I could launch it. By the way, even if it's in your personal tab, as most of you know, you can share it with others. That's a conversation for another day. Okay. Is dark mode supported in the UI? Yep. So over here on the right, where it says more options, there is a toggle theme. So do you like dark mode? Do you like light mode? Which is better, 1 or 2? Okay. One of the interesting problems with this class is it assumes you've had some other classes where we've talked about stuff like that. So we don't have the time necessarily to do that and go cover those things, but I certainly want to make sure you get your questions answered. So appreciate that. All right, so we are in good shape. We are done with lab number 1. And what do you say we take a break? So I've got a quick little 10-minute slide here. Let's take a 10-minute break. When this slide gets down to 0, let's go ahead and make sure we're back here. So grab yourself some coffee, tea, juice, water, whatever, and I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Hey, folks, this is John. Just for those of you on a break and stuff like that, I thought I'd introduce you to my executive producer here, Max. So Max is carefully watching all the things that we're doing. So. Yes, Max has learned a lot of Sumo through the years. Okay, folks, we are back, and a couple of you got some errors, so let's talk about that. More than likely, the error that you got is because you used not the legacy dashboards, but the new dashboards, okay? And the reason is there's a lot of work we have, a couple more steps we have to do for the new dashboards. So we're gonna rewrite the exercises at some point in time to fix that. But for right now, the way that you're gonna fix this is, and my question to you is, on this icon right here, so on your dashboard, is it this color green or does it look more like this color blue? If it's one of these blue ones, then you did not use the legacy dashboards. And I'll show you how to fix that in a second. But hopefully it is the green icon, but then I'm not sure why you're getting an error. And I'll talk about, if I go in here, click on this icon. Here's where I can select my actor. And again, this doesn't have a lookup associated with it, but this one does. So I backspace over it. I see there is my choices. So you can filter and all that fun stuff. Okay. Now, for those of you having this problem, and let me close this up. For those of you having a problem, and this icon is actually a blue icon, you use the legacy icon. To fix that, what you're going to do is you're going to go back here to your search, You're going to again click add to dashboard. And again, you can use top 10 user activity. This time I want you to use a different dashboard name. I still want you to use _sock, your initials, but this time I want you to pick a different number, okay? I'll call it new or whatever. And when you, is there a question? Okay. So you want to click on the new dashboard. And again, don't forget to throw this switch over to the left. Because if you throw this switch over to the left, like it is, and you add this, you'll be fine. If you created in the new dashboards, how we've got the query set up, the fact that we haven't created a parameterized template and all that stuff is the issue. But this, if it's switched over to the left, like we tell you to, you'll be fine. And that would then create a new dashboard with this right colored icon. Now, we'll find that when we add another query to this dashboard, you're going to get an informational message. And that information message looks like an error. So we'll get there in just a few minutes when we get to lab 2. Okay. Okay. So let me continue on here real quick, if you don't mind. And again, those of you who have problems, feel free to reach out to Jason or Tram, and we'll see if we can get you some help and get you all taken care of. But let me press on here with lab 2. In lab 2, what we're going to do is we're going to look things on a map. So we're going to create a map box plot. That's what this is, a map box visualization. And we're basically going to show where our users are. Now, when I look at this data, right? If I look at this data, This first part of the query is very much like the previous query we created, okay? So the only difference is that there's a field called response-elements.console login that we're going to capture. So back to my, actually, let me go back and create a new query here, a new log search query. And I am going to copy and paste this code in. So here in step 2, I'm going to copy and paste that code in. And I'm going to paste it right in here. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, it's my fault. I want to make sure all of our dashboards are set to run over a 16-minute period of time, not 15 minutes. So change this to last 60 minutes. And let's go ahead and run this. Now, this response elements.console login, this new field that we're talking about, is response elements console login. We want to know, were they successful or did they fail, right? So when people log in, we want to know, were they successful, did they fail, you know, that sort of thing. So this is the field that we're picking up. That is the only thing here that's new, which is why I'm copying and pasting this code instead of creating it all from scratch. I also want to add some where clauses where actor is not empty and where event type is not empty. So at step 4 here, I'm going to take the code that's there, going to add a new line by doing a shift enter, alt enter, pasting that code in. Again, what I'm testing for is I'm going to filter out anything where actor or event type is empty. That's all that's doing, is it's filtering out. This exclamation mark reads not. So where not is empty actor, where not is empty event type. So we're filtering out where things are empty, basically. We're allowing things that are not empty. And then here, of course, are our wonderful parameters. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and take that code. We've explained this. And I am going to paste that in. It creates my parameters. Again, I want to put a star here. I want to put a star here. And run it and make sure I see my data. Now we want to talk about some new stuff. Okay. First of all, let's make sure we're all set, all in good shape here. Okay. So the next command that we're going to use is a lookup command. And what it is we've got a partnership with a company called the Newstar. And Newstar, if we send them an IP address, they will give us all kinds of geographic information about that IP address. They'll send us latitude, longitude, and all that stuff. You'll notice here that we've got some tags, hyper tags in here. And if I right click on one of these hyper tags and say, open up in a new tab, you'll see that it's going to go into our documentation. And it's going to tell me all about this geo lookup. So in order to render this as a map, I need to have 3 fields. I need to have a latitude, I need to have a longitude, and I need to have a count. Additionally, I can have things like country code, country name, region, city, state, et cetera, et cetera. But this explains to us how this all works and, you know, more information than you probably ever want to know. So I'm going to take the code that's in this lab, this line right here, and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it to my query. Now, the way that you read this lookup command is you start at the back. So we're going to pass in the source IP, the IP address, and we're going to pass it in. Newstar is going to say that's an IP address. We're going to go to this URL, which is basically Newstar, and Newstar is going to give us a latitude, a longitude, country name, city, region, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now when I look at my data down here, let me just kind of shrink things up a little bit. You'll see I have actor, I have city, I have country name, I have, again, these are all alphabetized. But again, I need, in order to render this as a Mapbox plot, there's one more thing I need. I need to do some sort of aggregation, count, right? So that's why I don't see the map icon yet, because the map icon is going to be on my aggregates tab, not on my messages tab. And the only way I'm going to see an aggregates tab is when I do some sort of aggregation. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked the question, do we need is not empty? Okay. Does it automatically drop the records don't match? Yeah, but we're doing a little housekeeping here. So theoretically, if I'm filtering for those things, I don't necessarily need the is not empty, but we're just trying to be a little more precise. So thank you. You're right. Back to my thing here. So here, what I want to do is I want to count by my actor, my IP, my latitude, my country name, and my event type. Again, if I want those fields to show up in my aggregates tab, I need to make sure they're part of my count statement. So if I just said count by actor, it would show me a listing of who the users are and the counts. I want to see by actor, by IP address, by latitude, by country name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Event type. So now that I have latitude, I have longitude, and I have count, I now have this icon enabled, which is my geo lookup, and it will automatically create a map for me. We're using a map box plot. Now, you might notice that I'm seeing like a couple different versions of the world. Here's one version, here's another version, here's another version. That's simply because of the X and Y axis scaling of this. Once I add this to a dashboard, it'll be a normal scaled thing. It'll be fine. So don't worry about the fact that you're seeing 3 copies of the world here. Okay, it's very minor. And as you all might imagine, after we created our map, the next thing we're going to want to do is add this to our existing dashboard. So this dashboard we are going to call CloudTrail Geo of sign-in activity. So we're going to sit there and click on the add to dashboard. You only see the add to dashboard button in the aggregates tab. You won't see it in the messages tab. Again, we're going to call this Geo CloudTrail. And then for the dashboard, I want to select my existing dashboard. So there it is, SOC JWM 0125. That's what I called mine. You want to obviously call yours. And when I click add, something's going to happen here. I'm going to get a message. And it basically says, hey, look, the first panel that you put on there had some filters. And you had some specific names for those filters, event type and actor. This query also has event type and actor. Do you mean that they should be the same field names and basically work the same way, or should they be different? If you want them to be different, you would choose rename search parameters and rename them. But they are the same. We want them to be the same. We will then click add panel. So this is that information panel that shows up. When I now click add panel, you will now notice that it adds this geographical information, my plot right here. And again, I can make it a little bit bigger so I can see this information side to side. So now I can see where my users are logging in from. Okay. Okay, Thomas asked a question, can the map be modified, colors, visual, and all that stuff? Not really, not by much. That's something we're working with Mapbox on, the ability to do that. So the honest answer here is not really. Robert asked a question here. So geolocation is essentially a lookup table. It's actually a lookup to Newstar. Yep. There is also a CrowdStrike lookup information. You're correct. I'll show you that in just a little bit and one of the layups coming up. So just bear with me. Yep. So, and we're going to talk about all the different lookup mechanisms. Now, to answer your question, Robert, the smart thing to do is do a search on our documentation on lookup. And you'll find that we can use lookups to save data out. We can also use it for CrowdStrike. We can also use it for this geographic stuff with Newstar. So lots of different ways that we can do that. So yes, we're going to get into that a little bit. So I'm just trying to answer your question and give you some insight there. Okay. All right. Okay. Somebody's saying I'm seeing a map. I'm sorry, I'm seeing a table and stuff. So if I go back to my query, again, in your query, if you're seeing something that looks like this, what you need to do is click on this little icon right there, turn into a map. And then you can add it to your dashboard. Okay. So if you're seeing a table, you want to make it into a map. And again, I apologize, I'm going fast, but I am trying to catch up here on time. We're falling behind on time. All right. All right, and that pretty much knocks out lab number 2. Cool. Now, in lab number 3, we want to see the top 10 number of failed login attempts. And if I start looking at lab number 3, you will notice that it pretty much has the exact same fields that we've been using before. In fact, you're going to find typically when you start building queries that you're going to use a lot of the same fields over and over again. Whether you're dealing with Azure, whether you're dealing with AWS, whether you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, it's typically your queries are going to use similar filters over and over again. So I'm going to copy this code and I'm going to go into my Sumo Logic environment and I'm going to grab a new log search and I'm going to paste this code in. Whoops, excuse me. Obviously, I didn't get a good copy. There we go. And I'm going to change this to 60 minutes right off the bat. Okay. And I'm going to run this. I'm a big believer in code a little bit, test a little bit, make sure things run. Don't take a whole bunch of code unless you absolutely have to, and that sort of thing. All right, so down here, we're going to create our parameters. Again, done that before. We're familiar with how that gets done. I'm going to take that code. We are going to add it in here. Put some stars in there. Stars, John, there we go. And run it, make sure everything runs. Okay. Then we're going to check and make sure things aren't empty like we did before. And we also only want to know when somebody failed to log in and they specifically use the AWS console sign-in. So I only want, the purpose of this query is to see when people failed using the console sign-in, not an API sign-in. So we're filtering for that. Now, those of you who are, and I'm going to copy that code, I'm going to paste it in. Those of you who realize that we're filtering for a specific event type, I really don't need this parameter because I'm not really going to really take advantage of it, right? They're only going to see one event type. So I don't have to have that in there. I could comment it out, and I'll show you how to comment something out in just a little bit, or I can delete it if I want to. But just trying to be a little precise here. So now the results I'm getting are when somebody failed using an AWS console sign-in. And there are 3 results, 3 log messages. That's it over the last 60 minutes. All right. And then what I want to do is I want to break this down by a period of time. Okay. Now, one thing here, it says we're going to do a time slice by an hour. So let's increase my data time instead of 60 minutes, which is 1 hour. Let's look at the last 24 hours. So when I run this for the last 24 hours, I see that I now have 75 of these log messages where somebody failed to log in. And so what I want to do is I want to break it down to see if it's happening in a specific hour. For that, I am going to use the time slice operator. So the command is time slice. And then what do I want to create my buckets in? I want 1H for 1 hour. So what this is going to do, this is going to create me 24 1-hour buckets. So it's going to, when I can count things and combine things, it's going to put them in these 1-hour buckets. When I run this, I don't see any of my time slices yet because I didn't ask it to display that. And then down here, I want to count by my time slice, by my actor, by my event type, by my event name, by my result. And then I only want to see the top 10 actors by my time slice, event type, and result count. So now when I run this, and by the way, let me, my pipe I see didn't get added there. So let me go ahead and add my pipe. So now, again, because I'm doing my count, I now have this aggregates tab. And now I can see broken down by who my actor is, what time slice, what hour, and how many failures they had within that hour. So now I'm seeing what users are having a hard time logging in. Now, this could be, gee, I made a mistake. I typed in wrong. I failed. That's, but it could also be somebody trying to hack in with that user ID. In fact, if I see, kind of a high number, I'd probably be more suspicious. So that's the purpose of that query. By the way, typically at the end of the exercises, end of each lab, we give you what the entire query should look like to save time, okay? And we're going to take this information in its table form, and we're going to add it to our dashboard. So we're going to call this dashboard top 10 failed logins. I'm on step 11 of lab 3. So we're going to go back here. We're going to click add to dashboard. Again, I'm going to call this top 10 failed logins. And again, I want to specify my dashboard that I'm working on here. And we're going to add this to that dashboard. And when I do that, again, I get the same informational panel saying you got 2 parameters in here. Do they mean the same as the other parameters? And if they do, you select add panel, which they do. So again, now I've added a 3rd panel to this dashboard. And if I want to here, I can make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. By the way, when I go into my filters, and if I change my event type to say AWS API call, here I'm seeing API call. Here I should see some, whether people have signed in through API call. Down here, I don't get any data because remember, we're filtering specifically for the other type, the console login. So if I change this back to my console sign in, now I'm seeing my top 10 users using this console sign in. I'm seeing where they're logging in from. I'm seeing my top 10 failed in attempts. So hopefully we are all set. Okay. That takes us to our next lab. Lab 4. Account compromise detection from brute force attack. The theory behind the brute force attack is somebody is trying to log in using somebody's credentials or trying to guess their password. That's what a brute force attack is. Trying to guess. So we're going to see a lot of failed logins, and then maybe we'll see some success. All right. So that's basically what we're doing here. Okay. All right. So again, when I look at this code, I'm going to grab this code. I am going to grab a new log search. I am going to paste this code in. And again, I mentioned earlier, this is 60 minutes. These should actually be 24 hours. My apologies, I messed that up. So again, the same code here. I'm not going to explain it. We did it earlier. Should be good to go. Again, I'm going to take these where clauses, my parameters, copy, add, paste, put some global wildcards in there. Continuing on, again, what I'm going to do here in step 7 is I'm going to aggregate over 1 hour. So I'm going to do a time slice for 1 hour. I'm going to create 1 hour time buckets. Then I'm going to have an if statement, and I'm going to look at that result. Remember up here in my query, I have the result. Were you successful? Where did you fail? This right here. Were you successful? Or did you fail? And so what I want to do is I want to say if the result was success, then I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there in this field called success count. So it's going to create a new field, a new column called success count. And if I was successful, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. If the result was failure, I'm going to create a new field called failure count. I'm going to put a 1 in there and a 0 in there. Then I'm going to take and sum these ones, add them up, total them, if you will. So I'm going to basically break this information up here a little bit. So let me go back here. Let me add this information. Let me paste it in. Let me run it out. Okay. So it's running my query. There we go. And so what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing, okay, Joe Schmo here had 19 successful logins, 0 failures. Kevin had 74 successful logins, 3 failures. Okay. And so I'm seeing broken down by time in these 1-hour blocks when my users were logging in, what's happening, that sort of thing. Now, there's one other thing I want to do here, and that is I really don't care about, for brute force, if they fail to log in, if that value is 0, I don't care, right? I'm really looking for the high failures and then the successes. That's what I'm looking for. So what I want to do here is I'm going to failure out, and I'm going to add a where clause and say, I don't want to see where failure is. I only want to see where failure is greater than 0. I don't want to see the zeros. And then I'm going to take my failure, remember my failure up here, I want to divide it by my success times 100% to calculate this thing called failure percentage. Because the higher the failure percentage, the more likely I might have had a brute force attack. So I'm just basically doing a simple math function here. That is, bear with me a second. So I got rid of all my failures equals 0. So now my failures have a high number in here. And then I can see my failure percentage. And I can see if I've got a higher percentage than normal, maybe I've got examples here of a brute force attack. Okay. Because again, a brute force attack is number of failures followed by maybe a success. So this is an example of a brute force query that you and I and others can use. And here's what the entire query looks like. Okay. And of course, as you guessed it, we are going to take this and we are going to add this to our dashboard, because we want that dashboard to be the one-stop shop for our SOC team to find their information. So back to my query. Again, down here, because I have an aggregates tab, because I did a count or a sum or something, I have the ability to add to dashboard. And again, I'm going to call this dashboard possible brute force temps. And I again want to add to my existing dashboard. And same informational panel, life is good. And again, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this one out a little bit too. Okay. All right. Moving right along, let's move on to the next lab. Detecting a land speed violation. Now, I'm going to warn you, this particular lab is very intense and there's a few test questions on it. So let me help you out here a little bit. What a land speed violation is when a user logs in from an IP address and then logs in from a different IP address within a specific period of time, right? Which is physically impossible. So if I log in from New Hampshire, an IP address from New Hampshire, and then 3 hours later, I log in from an IP address in, say, Massachusetts, that's fine. Probable, no problem. But if I log in from New Hampshire and then 3 hours later, I log in from San Francisco, that's not probable. There's no way I can get from East Coast to West Coast in 3 hours. Doesn't make sense. Now, is it possible that I logged in since NordVPN, which gave me that IP address? Yes, there is some ways that it could happen. But as a rule, it is not something that happens. So this might be an indication that while I'm here on the East Coast logging in, somebody's trying to hack into me on the West Coast, okay? So that's what a land speed violation is. Now, this particular query, I'm going to tell you, has lots of code, lots and lots and lots of code, okay? I'm going to walk you through the code and all that sort of thing. There's going to be a test question, however, that says in the pseudo code or the flowchart to put these steps in order. And all you have to do is go into this lab right here. And these are the steps. And you will drag and put them in the right order and get that question right. Okay. So when you see this question, you see all these steps, the painful, It's long, it's involved. You can take two choices. One, you can say, look, I'm not going to answer it. I'll take it wrong. And the other questions I'll get right and I'll still pass. Or you can go in here, look at this diagram and drag them and put them in the right order. Okay. So as you can see, there's lots of things that happen. And by the way, the purpose of this panel and this discussion is that when you get an effort like this, something that's going to take some lot of code, you need to break it down. You kind of need to pseudocode it, right? Those of you who are developers understand this. We need to, okay, what I need to do this first, I need to do this second, I need to do this third, I need to break the process down, and then you write the code for each little process, and then you figure that out. Now, I am going to go in here, and I am going to grab the final code. So here it says step 11, final query should be. And I'm going to grab all of this code. And as I said before, I'm going to walk through this. So just bear with me. I'm going to take all this code. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to grab myself another search tab. I'm going to paste all this lovely code in. I'm going to change my time frame here for the last 24 hours. Now, let's take a look at some of this code. Here, we're looking at a CloudTrail log. This first line is a comment. And the way you add a comment is simply 2 forward slashes, okay? That's how you can comment something out if you want to, 2 forward slashes. And we can put comments in here if we want to. Now, from this CloudTrail data, we are extracting out the username and the IP address. And you can see I can do this in one command instead of multiple commands. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to use my parameter. This time, instead of calling it actor like we have, we called it user here. And what I want to do is I want to filter where the user matches my parameter of actor. You'll find in Sumo logic, we have a function called isPublicIP. And basically what we're doing here is we only want to get the public IPs. The private IPs, the 127.0.0.1 loopback, the 192.168, no, we don't want that. So we only want public IP addresses. We don't care about private IP addresses. Then here in the minimum message time, what I'm doing is I'm going to the first message. Minimum means I'm going to the first message and I want to see the message time. I'm going to call that login time and I want to see the user and the IP address. And I'm going to sort this by my user. And this plus login time means I want to sort it by login time in ascending order. You'll find that when we do sort by, you can specify either the words ascending or descending, or you can also put plus signs or minus signs in there, okay? So this is code that we've probably seen before. Now, this function, actually, I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me comment out a bunch of lines, and I'm going to show you how to comment out a whole bunch of lines at the same time. If you put your cursor in front of the line that you want to comment out, like I've done here, put your cursor and anchor it in there. And if you hold down your shift key, hold down your option key or your alt key, your option key or your alt key, your cursor will change to a plus sign. And then if you scroll down, what you'll find is it will draw you a line. Should draw you a line here. Hang on a second. To drag, I'm sorry, you want to do a drag down, and it will draw you a line. And then you can type in whatever you want across each of those lines. In my case, I'm going to type in 2 forward slashes. Okay. So I'm going to comment out these lines because I'm a big believer of code a little bit, run a little bit. So I've commented out those lines. And now I'm going to go ahead and click the run button here. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to add my wildcard there, and then I'm going to click the run button. So I can see after this first line, what am I seeing? And by the way, let me see if I can, I can't really bring it up. So right now, what I'm looking at here is I'm sorting by my user and my login times. So here's my users, here's the IP, here's the login time. And I can see basically what's going on over the last 24 hours. Now, we have a function in Sumo logic that takes an IP address and it converts it to a number, converts it to a decimal. So I'm going to remove these comments. And it's going to convert my IP here to a decimal value. And then this backshift operator is going to look for the previous IP address by that user. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the logs. I'm going to say, okay, here's a user. What IP address do they have now? That was the minimum state. Now I'm going to go back to the previous one, and then the previous one, and then the previous one. So I'm going to look up all the different locations a user's been at. Okay. So again, I'm looking at when they're previously at. This is the decimal value that the IP to IPv4 to number creates. It's going to create that value, a decimal value for us. By the way, not only do I want to go back and see what their previous IP address was, I also want to see their previous login time. And I also want to filter out where the results of my backshift are equal to null, where I don't get any. No, it's your last record. I don't care about your last record. I care about starting point, ending point. I care about the stuff in between. So what I've got right here is my user, their IP address, their login time in a decimal value, their IP decimal value, their previous IP address, their previous login time. Yeah. Now, this function right here is nothing more than take that number and converts it back to an IP address, a V4 IP address. And it's a series of raising something to the power of 256 and creating the individual octets. It's mathematical. You can take it, you know, that sort of thing. Does this support IPv6? Yeah, good question. Hang on. I'll let Jason take care of that. So basically all I'm doing is I'm converting stuff back to IP addresses here. And then I am going to start looking things up. I'm going to do a geographic lookup. Excuse me. I'm going to do 2 geographic lookups. Hang on a second. I just made a mistake. Bear with me a second, folks. I made a typo here, so I'm going to fix it. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm doing 2 lookups. I'm looking at your first IP address, okay? And I am going to call that latitude, lat1. I'm going to call the longitude, long1. And I'm also going to get the country name in there. So your first IP address, I'm going to go and call that lat1, lat2, or lat1, long1. Then I'm going to look at your previous IP address. I'm going to call that lat2, long2. And so now I'm looking at the various IP addresses that the user has logged in. And I am looking up what country they are from. And also, here's your previous IP address, current IP address, the latitude, the longitude, all that good stuff. Getting lots of information here. And I'm just doing some housekeeping here to filter out stuff that where I've got nulls. Okay. Then I'm going to use the Haversine formula. Now, back to my lab for a second. What the Haversine formula does, the Haversine function does, I pass in 2 latitudes, 2 longitudes, and it tells me the distance in kilometers. So here's an IP address, here's a geographic latitude, longitude, here's another geographic latitude, longitude, and it's going to give me the distance. That's what the Haversine function does. And it gives it to me in kilometers. So I'm going to pass in and use this Haversine formula. That's going to give me my distance. So I need to know 2 things here. I need to know my distance, my physical distance in kilometers or whatever. And then I also need to know the distance in time. So I'm going to go down here and I am going to take the current login time minus my previous login time, divide it by 3,600,000, which is going to basically give me my time in hours. The change, the difference between the hours. Because again, I could have gone, 5,000 miles in 10 hours. That's fine. With air travel today, you can do that. But I want to see how much, 5,000 miles in 10 minutes, that is not possible to do. So I need to have both these things. I need to have the distance and I need to have the time. Now, down here at the bottom, we're getting all kinds of stuff, right? We got all kinds of values here. So in a little bit, we're going to start housekeeping and cleaning some of this stuff up to make it more readable. Okay. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take their distance in kilometers divided by their change of time, login time, and I'm going to calculate that and call that velocity. And then I'm going to apply a filter to where I have zero velocity. Because right now, John Meredith could have logged in from New Hampshire, and John Meredith could have logged in an hour later from New Hampshire. The velocity is zero. We don't care about those records. So when I run this, now you'll see I'm down to a few less records. 39,000 as opposed to, I'm sorry, 58,000 as opposed to what I had before. And I'm now showing things where I have a parent velocity greater than zero. Then I'm going to arbitrarily decide what suspicious velocity I should have. I'm going to set a value of 500 and call it suspicious speed. And then I'm going to compare the apparent velocity and see where it's greater than this suspicious speed. And I want to filter and only see where I've got a suspicious speed of greater than 500 kilometers per hour. And then finally here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start concatenating things and putting things together. I'm going to start formatting things and start to specify the fields that I want to display. Because right now I've got a boatload of information down here and it's too much. So I want to simplify things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to concatenate the IP and the previous IP and call it IP addresses. I'm also then going to see, is the country name 1 and country name 2 the same name? If they are, I'm only going to display it once. If it's a different name, I want to display both countries. So I've added my IP addresses field and I've added my countries field. So over here to the right, here's my IP addresses. Here's my country names to make it easy for me to see what's going on. Then I'm going to use the fields command to get rid of a lot of these fields that I don't need. So in this case, I'm saying in the fields command, display my user, display the IP addresses, the countries, the distance in kilometers, the login time difference, and the apparent velocity. So now I'm only showing a little bit of data down here at the bottom. Again, with the fields command, you can decide what you want to display, what you don't want to display, that sort of thing. So now I'm seeing my users, the IP addresses they may have logged in from, the countries, the distance, time, so forth and so on. In fact, this first one where the distance time is 0, and they logged in from both Brazil and the United States, that sounds suspicious to me. And then, of course, I'm going to also make sure that I don't have any null users. And I also, if I take a situation where I do a divide by 0, when I do my calculation here, I want to get rid of that divide by 0. So anywhere where I have anywhere where I have a value of infinity, here's my divide by zeros, I want to get rid of those. Excuse me. And then I'm going to sort it, and then I'm done. So this is quite the evolution. I'm sorting it by the velocity. So this is quite a query, quite a long and involved query. Okay. And again, now that we know potential users that have logged in from different IP addresses, different countries, and all that stuff, we of course want to add this to our existing dashboard. So here we are in step 13. I'm going to call this land speed violations. And we can add this to our existing dashboard. So building lots of queries here with lots of information. Okay. Okay. Jennifer, you shouldn't be getting those errors. If you want, we can take a look at it here in a little bit when we go to the exam, so we can take a look at it. And again, Jason's trying to help you out there. Great. All right, now, good news. Just a couple more things we want to talk about, and then we are going to get you to the exam. I know I'm running about 15 minutes late, and I apologize for that, but I will be here. You will have an hour for the exam, no matter when we get there, and we should get there in about 12 minutes. So in this next exercise, what we're doing is we're going to show you how we created that lookup table for our parameters. So remember back here, hang on a second. When I went to event type and I got rid of this, I have a lookup table. So how do we create this lookup table? Well, what we did was we went and created a new log search. Okay. And in our case, we're going to create one for actor. So here in lab 6, we're going to write a query that looks at our CloudTrail data, and we're going to get our username, which we're going to call actor. We're going to count it by actor, and then we're going to remove the count. And then we're going to save it. So let me take this code. Let me copy it. Let me paste it. Let me change this to 24 hours. Now, I'm going to comment out this last line because it's not going to like this last line just yet. I'm also going to comment out the second to last line. So all I'm doing is I'm writing a query, my CloudTrail data that gives me a list of all my users who've logged in the last 24 hours, right? And it's counting them by actor. Now, what I want is a list of my users, right? I don't really want a count. I don't need a count in my table. So with a fields command, I am saying, look, take away this underscore count. Minus underscore count is going to take that away and remove that. So now when I run this, all I see is my list of users. Then as far as my lookup command, I can use the save command. And what I need to do is in my shared directory, I want to change this where these brackets are to my initials, and then again, some unique date, some unique number, which I'm going to use today's date, 25. And this is then going to, when I run this, it's going to say, wait a second, you don't want to run this and see this. You're asking to save this. Is that really what you want to do? So when I run this, I get this message that pops up and says, are you really trying to save this? And yes, I am. It's going to write it into my shared directory. So here in the shared directory, you will be able to see in our various lookups, the various lookups and stuff that we save. Okay. Now, not quite sure why that's not working, but I'll play with it later. What I also need to do is I need to copy this. Okay. I want to copy this because I'm going to use it in my parameters now. So now it is saved and put a file out there of a listing of all of my actors. And so now I can go back to a previous query. I can go back into the properties of that parameter. And now I can set the value for that parameter saying that I'm going to use a lookup. And here's why I copied and pasted it. Now I could, if I want to, just start typing it in, right? And again, the auto sense will kind of help me out. So start it with my initials. And again, I want to make sure I'm very careful about which one of these I've used. And now when I click save, whoops, excuse me, I forgot one thing. I've got to specify the value, the field that I want. So I did have count in there. I would see actor and count. I would pick actor. And that's basically what I want to use. So now when I click save, now when I go up here and I get rid of this, now I see my pick list. Now I see my pick list and I can filter for a specific user here in my query if I want to. And then I'm also going to want to update my dashboard with this. Oops, excuse me, let me replace that. And so I can pick the different users and stuff that I want. That's how we create those lookups. Okay. Somebody asked, how do we create that lookup table again? Okay. Again, this is in lab 6. Here's the query that we use to build that. And because we use the save command in our query, it's going to give us this panel that says you want to save this, not display it. And it will then save it. And then we're going to go in and we can see that. We can run the cat command to see it. And we're going to go into our parameters and we're going to change it to now use that lookup. So that's how we did it. Okay. Again, in the interest of saving time here, I'm just trying to move forward. Now, a couple more labs and we're almost done. In lab 7, for those of you who happen to have CloudTrail, and we've built all these off of CloudTrail, our goal was to give you something that you could take home, that you could install on your company's environment. The problem is that we don't know what you called your data source, our source category. So we're not even sure you're using source categories. But if you are using source categories, what we have to do is we have to export this out as JSON, go in and change the source category to what you called it, and then we should be able to import it and go from there. So lab 7 walks you through this. So in lab 7, what we want to do is we want to find our dashboard. Bear with me a second while I do that. SOC JWM 0125. And in here on my more action button, you'll notice there's an option to export this. And it's got the JSON right there. The JSON that built this dashboard up is right here. And I can choose to download it. And I'm downloading it. Then I can open this up. Let me show it in my Finder. I'm on a Mac. You can show it in your Explorer, whatever you want. But then I can open this up with some sort of a coding tool, some sort of a text editor tool, right? Let me go ahead and use Visual Studio Code, for example, here. And so what this is going to do is this is going to show me the code that makes this up. And in each of our panels, in each of our queries, it starts off with, in my case, source category equals lab/AWS/CloudTrail. Well, that's what we called the data source. The question is, what did you call the data source? Did you call it CloudTrail or AWS or, you know, my security labs, my security log, whatever you called it? So what we need to do is we need to do a source and replace on this, a search and replace on this field, and you'll see it. It's in here lots and lots of times. So you change this. Then you can go in here and you can select everything in here and you can copy it. Then in your personal folder up here at the top, you can choose to import and you can give it a name. SOC dashboard, and you can paste in all of that JSON. You can paste in all of that JSON and you can import this. And it will then put it in your personal folder. And then you can share it with your organization if you want, or talk to your admin about put it in the library folder. Now, there is 2 things that this query and this dashboard is not going to have. Those are our 2 lookup tables. Lookup table here, our lookup table there. So in this lab, we also gave you the code to create these 2 lookups. And you'll run these 2, you'll build 2 queries, one for this, one for that. And then you'll go in and just change the value to tell it to look at those values. And you have a working dashboard in your company. So if anybody wants to play with that, we can certainly do that, you know, offline or whatever if you need help. There's one more lab here, and this uses CrowdStrike. And as somebody mentioned earlier, this is really kind of important because CrowdStrike normally costs a fair amount of money. But through Sumo Logic, you can get access to CrowdStrike's information. So if I look at this link and I open this link up in a new tab, what is CrowdStrike information? What can we see about it? What kind of information can I get? You know, can I look up by IP address, by domain, by email address? Yes, you can. What sort of information do I see? who are the actors, what are the word panda mean, what does the word kitten mean, so forth and so on. So you can see, if there's an IP address that's from a malicious area or a malicious group, you can see information about that malicious group. And so here in this lab 8, we've got some code. And if you'll bear with me just a second here, I'm just trying to find the code. Okay. Again, all we're doing is we're parsing out the IP address. This is a different way of parsing out the IP address. Okay, just so you know, parse regular expression. And so we're filtering out where the IP address is 0.0.0 or 127.0.0.1. Okay, we could use that public IP address and done it that way. But this lookup right here, this lookup type, actor, raw, threat level, we're going to rename threat level as malicious confidence. This URL is what allows us to access this CrowdStrike database. So let me go out here for a second. Let me take this query. Paste this query in. And by the way, notice I'm looking at all my logs. The star right here means look at all my logs. I don't care. It doesn't have to be CrowdStrike, it can be anything. And when I run this, what it's doing is it's grabbing all the IP addresses from all of my logs, which is why I did a parse regex. My logs were in different, my IP addresses were in different places in my logs. And again, I'm filtering out some stuff. But here I can now see some various information. I get my count. And my count, this function I'm using here is called an outlier function. Tell you what, let me do this. Let me comment this out. Comment this out. Comment this out. Let's do this real quick. So again, I'm looking here, I'm looking at the information based on my IP address for the last 24 hours across all my logs. This might take a few seconds. Okay. So here I have my timestamp. Here I have the IP address. We looked it up and found this low confidence. There's no actor assigned. Again, what source category it came from, what source it came from, and again, how many times did we see it? So basically what I'm looking at here, as I said, is I'm I'm filtering where I type the IP address has got malicious confidence associated with it. So I'm only seeing stuff that's problematic. I'm grabbing some specific fields here. I'm creating my time slices to break it down in 1-minute segments. By the way, I'll change the time down here a little bit. Now, when I display this, I change the fields that I want to see. I don't want to see all these fields. I only want to see, I want to get rid of IP address, malicious confidence, actor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm only seeing my time and my count. Then I can count by my time slice. And then for those of you who've had our search mastery class, you know that we have an outlier function. And that outlier function will basically calculate standard deviation based on standard deviation and stuff like that, whether or not I'm seeing what could be potentially malicious activity. So when this query gets done running, it's okay. I'll tell you what, let me change the period here a little bit, make it something much smaller. So it runs a little faster. Remember, I'm going to all my logs across my entire environment. So this, like I said, is why it's taking so long. I'm not just looking at my CloudTrail logs. I'm looking at all my logs. Now, I can see this information here, and this numbers are all fine, well and good, and I can talk to you about the outlier function. But when I show this as a line chart, now I can see here's my data points, and I can see my cloud as my standard deviation. And anything that does a data point that occurs outside of my cloud is an outlier. So I can see perhaps when I am being maliciously attacked, if you will, based on this information. And again, if you want to learn more about the outlier function, you can search and look at our documentation, or again, you can take the search mastery class. But I'm just trying to get you guys kind of caught back up here on time. Okay. All right. And that takes care of the class. By the way, could I also add an IP address lookup in here, a geo lookup? Absolutely, I could. Okay. So I can see where these things are coming from and all that stuff. Absolutely. So there's a lot more things that you can do here. Now, that takes care of lab 8, and that takes care of the course. Any particular questions, any particular wrap-up questions before I help point you in the direction of where these certification exams are? Any questions? Again, you'll still have 60 minutes or so to do the exam. You'll have lots of time. I'll be here, no problem.
In parameter, there was a type keyword. What is that? How to use it?
I'm sorry, data type?
In the parameter, there was a type string and keyword. There was one
On this last lab I just did?
in the initial
This
lab.
labs. Yeah, we got you. Okay.
So we have type number, string, and keyword.
Yep. So, oh, I see. Wait, I'm sorry. Type number, string, keyword. Okay, right. So when I create a parameter, right, the parameter is, if I look at the parameter settings, what's the parameter name? What its default value is, and a star is a global wildcard. But I could make the default value a specific name or a specific thing I want it to be. But in this case, I want to see everything. I want to see all the values. And then the data type is of string, because that's what the data is in. It's in string. It's not numeric. So that's where those things come from when we create parameters.
Right. My question was that we have data type string. There is also some type keyword.
I'm sorry, I'm not catching you.
Right now we are using data type string. There is a
Yeah.
data type keyword. Go
Okay.
to edit mode. Click on this tripping. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. Are you
Yeah,
asking about
data
this?
type? Data type.
Okay, data type. Okay, hold on. Data type. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
The
Keyword.
Yes.
Yep. Good question. I'm not sure. Jason, do you have any input on this?
Sorry, I was actually answering a different question in the chat, but I can send through some documentation around the keyword search expressions that I just posted in the chat. And so the purpose of the keyword search expression is it allows you to define the scope of the data for the query. And then there's various modifiers you can add, and all the syntax is in that documentation I just sent through. So hopefully that's helpful context for keyword.
Okay. I will see that.
Thanks for asking. Let me hit the Q&As here real quick. Okay. Yeah, okay. Somebody's asked a question about the exams. I'll get into that in just a minute, so bear with me. And then any other questions about the course? All right. As far as the exams go, and by the way, I notice I got a bunch of tabs here open. I don't need these tabs open anymore. So I'm going to close them up. So I'm going to click on any one of the tabs, and you'll see I have an option to close all tabs. Now I'm going to do this. You may or may not want to do this, but I'm going to close up all my tabs to kind of clean things up. Now, you all are logged in as training plus analyst, whatever, right? Some number. We don't want that person, that user, to take the exam. We want you with your name, your real name, to take the exam. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is, for right now in our training environment, I want you to go ahead and click out of and log out of our training environment. So again, if your navigation panel is not open, open it up by clicking on the header up here. Go down here where your username is, and please click sign out. What we want you to do is we want you to take the training exam in your Sumo Logic environment, your company's Sumo Logic environment, so that when you log in, you have your name, your credit, and stuff like that. If any of you do not have a Sumo Logic environment, you can sign up for a free demo environment where you can take the exam. I will put this in the chat box. So bear with me a second. Okay, there it is in the chat box. And so you can sign up for a free environment, but I need you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment such that when you log in, down here in the corner, in the lower left corner, and again, if your navigation panel isn't open, open it up. And I want you to, you should have your name, your first name and your last name. Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute to log into your company's environment. And for those of you who've taken our certification exams before, you know how to get to the certification stuff. But for those of you who don't, and I'm assuming most of you don't, I'm going to walk you through it, okay? So I'm going to assume that you're all logged into your company's Sumo Logic environment. I'm going to assume when you go down here, you see your first name and your last name. Many of you, to get to our certification environment, you click on our certification exam area. You click on this house tab. You click on certification. And when you click on get certified, one of two things is going to happen. One, it's either going to take you into our learning management system where you can take your exams and all that stuff. And I'll get into that in just a minute. Or two, what might happen is when you click on get certified, for many of you, it might take you back here. Okay. And you might think that's a bug. It's actually a feature. We at Sumo Logic will not let you move from one environment in Sumo Logic to another environment in Sumo Logic without your permission. All right. So for those of you who are clicking on the home tab, certification, get certified. If it takes you back here to home, or it doesn't take you to our LMS, we're going to fix that. And it's a one-time fix. Once it's done, you don't have to fix it again. The way that you're going to fix it is that you are going to go into the navigation panel. And down here at the bottom of the navigation panel is your main menu. So you're going to open up your navigation panel. In your main menu at the bottom, find help. Click on help. And under help, you'll see all kinds of subtopics. Under help, click on community. Now, when you click on community, if you're having this problem, you should see a panel appear. I'm not seeing it because I did this years ago and fixed this. But you should see a panel that appears that basically there's a button on there that says verify email or allow or whatever that button says. So you click on that button. And within a minute or two, maybe 3, you will get an email from Sumo Logic. So check your inbox. You will get an email from Sumo Logic that says, we understand you want permission to move from environment to environment. We want to verify your email. And in the body of that email is a button. So you find that email, you click on that button. This problem now goes away. You've given us permission to move you from one environment to another. So now, when you go into Sumo Logic and you click on home and you click on certification and you click on get certified, Shazam, it's going to take you into our learning management system. Now, in this learning management system, I just want to point out something here real quick, where it says to become a Sumo Logic expert in this area is where all of our self-paced courses are. So for example, here under security, here is our self-paced courses that we have that you can go through and, have yourself a good time. Okay. Now for the test, the middle button up here is where it says get certified. You click on get certified, and I'm going to walk you through this real quick. Just bear with me. There's a reason why I'm doing it. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile, my profile, whatever. In this profile, this is where you and I can see the exams that we took. If we pass them, we can see our certificate. So you can do a screen capture of that certificate and send it to us to, again, training-promotions@sumologic.com to get your voucher for Uber Eats. You can also add this into your LinkedIn profile. So automatically add your certification to your LinkedIn profile. So you can see when you pass the exam, you will see this information and you'll be able to get to it. Okay. Now, if I scroll to the bottom, there's a done button down here. I'm going to close that, get out of this and go back to where I was. What we want here, folks, is under security. If I click on security, you will see that I have this cloud security monitoring and analytics exam. Okay. This is the exam. This is the one you want to click on, not the Cloud SIM fundamentals. That'll be tomorrow. The Cloud SIM administration, that'll be Thursday. This is today's exam. When you click on this, you have the option to register. Takes but a second. You click on the registration button, boom, you're registered. Done. That's it. Pretty easy. Then in here, before you start, if you click on it, it says your exam consists of only 22 questions, not the usual 30. You got 60 minutes to complete it. And the passing score is normally 75, but because this is a new exam, we're making the passing score 70, trying to help you out. Okay. So this is information about it. It's open book, open notes. You can even ask your instructor if you get stuck. We will be here. I will be here. Jason will be here. If you get stuck, we'll gladly help you out. Okay. Again, the fill in the blanks, multiple choice, all that good stuff. When I click next from here, and I don't want you to click next just yet, just follow, just watch me with your eyes. Here's where I can now start my assessment. So here's my 60-minute counter. I can start scrolling down, and when I start seeing questions, my counter starts to count down. So how can users see where users are logging in all across the world, right? We did that through a geo lookup command, through Newstar, right? That's what we did. So that's the answer to that question. This is that one about how to create the steps for the land speed violation, right? Here's the one where you drag and drop and put them in order. I'm going to let that one go for right now. Okay. Advantages of using the scheduled view. We didn't talk about scheduled views, so let me help you with this one. The scheduled views, and this is one of the few questions we don't talk about here, but pre-aggravated scheduled views are cost effective. That is true. Scheduled views take advantage of continuous query. That is true. Scheduled views need to re-ingest the data. That is false. And scheduled views provide a faster response time. That is true. So everything's true except the re-ingest data. Now I've answered 2 of the questions. And this is why I wanted you to follow along with me and not necessarily do this with me right now. I'm going to go to the end and I'm going to say I'm done. And it says here, I did not pass. Well, no kidding, I didn't pass. I only answered 2 questions. But here you can see what questions you got right, what questions you got wrong. You will not see which answers are wrong or right. You will only see what questions you got right or what questions you got wrong. And then most importantly, when you're done with the exam, there's a submit button over here. If you pass the exam, please click that submit button, because when you click that submit button, it now writes it to your profile. If you don't click the submit button, you didn't pass the exam. As far as the profile is concerned, you don't have a certificate. So if you pass, please click that submit button. All right. That's the reason I wanted to show you all this. Okay. Dan asked, is there a class offered about log ingest from different sources? We typically use, a lot of our classes, we use Apache data. We use some different sources, but probably not all the different sources that you want. Okay. So I'm not sure specifically what you're looking for there, Dan, help us out. And then there's a conversation between him and Jason. Okay. And how can I retake it? Just go back in and hit it like you did before. That's exactly right. So all you got to do, Rafet, to retake it, go back in and just do it all over again. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that stuff up. Let's see if there's anything else left in the chat box. All right. Okay, so Patrick, the answer to the question for logging in, we want you to log into your company's environment so that you're logged in with your name, not training plus analyst with some crazy number. We want to make sure you get credit for this. So that's why we want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. If you don't have one, in the chat box, I put a link in for a free trial that you can do. So hopefully that answers that question. So good. All right. Do we get the email the results for the Grubhub? Actually, it's for Uber Eats. But yes, what you're going to do is you're going to send it to, and bear with me a second while I grab that information right off of the slide. So here, what you're going to want to do is send a copy of your certificate to Training Promotions at sumologic.com. And Tram and Company will take care of that. Okay. It's one of the many things that she does for us. One last comment or one last thing. Again, here is my contact information. In case you have any questions going forward, if there's anything we can do to help you, please feel free to ask. And let me share up my video one last time. And again, thank you all for attending. I will be here for the next hour to hour and 20 minutes or so while you all take your exams. If there's anything we can do to help you, let us know. Otherwise, on behalf of myself and everyone at Sumo, I hope to see you tomorrow, and I hope you have a great night. Again, last reminder, we are also offering this class again later today, 4 p.m. West Coast time, 7 p.m. East Coast time. If you want to invite your friends for it. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow on the Cloud Sim class, and I'll see you Thursday. Please be safe. And again, thanks for attending.